What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. There are moments when history stops pretending and drops the mask, when all the carefully worded statements, legal frameworks, and diplomatic theater collapse into something brutally simple. This is one of these moments. Earlier this week, the United States seized 2 Russian-flagged oil tankers from what Moscow proudly calls its shadow fleet. Not sanctioned paperwork, not frozen accounts, not another strongly worded press release. No, this time actual physical ships, with the crews on board, Russian flags painted on steel hulls, taken now. And what makes this story so humiliating for the Kremlin and Putin particularly personally, is not just the seizure itself, it's just how it happened, where it happened, and who stood by watching while it happened. Because for years Putin has been betting on one idea about all them all, that rules only apply to the weak, and that Russia is strong enough to ignore them. What we're seeing right now is the price of that bet coming due with interest. All Russia was proudly talking about is that sanctions do not work, not even trying to hide their shadow fleet tankers. And when 2 of them got captured, Putin did absolutely nothing about it. He got humiliated in front of the whole world and did absolutely nothing. Let's start with what actually happened, because the details do matter. One of the seized vessels, originally known as Bella 1, entered the Caribbean on December 20. When the US Coast Guard attempted to board it, the tanker did not comply. Instead, it turned around and fled into the Atlantic like a thief caught mid-act. During the pursuit, it did what Russia's shadow fleet has perfected over the past several years. It tried to just disappear on paper. The ship reflagged from Guyana to Russia while already at sea. Days later, Moscow officially requested that the US stop the chase, announcing that the tanker had also been changed its name to Marinera, as if repainting a name on the hull or hull. I don't know, tell me guys how to pronounce it. As if repainting a name could erase the cargo inside. To really underline the absurdity, Russia dispatched several warships and even a submarine to escort the tanker. A show of force, a signal, a bluff. And then came the moment that shattered the illusion completely. On January 7, as the tanker sailed between Iceland and the United Kingdom, US troops boarded it anyway. The Russian warships watched. They did not intervene, they did not fire, they did not even attempt to stop it. The tanker was seized, end of story. The crew was detained, felony charges followed, and the Russian Navy stood there like security guards watching a robbery that they were paid not to stop. This was not just a mere simple misunderstanding, no, this was not accidental. This was the physical enforcement of a reality Putin has been trying to deny. That basically flags do not protect criminals and escorting an illegal operation does not magically make it legal. If you are trying so hard to explain yourself and prove why you are not guilty, it only makes it that much more suspicious. But, well, I guess the Kremlin missed Psychology 101 classes. Well, anyways, why would Russia even need to care about having its shadow fleet so wide in the open and so obvious to other countries? Why not come up with something more elaborate and confusing? Let's talk about it in our next chapter. To understand why this matters so much, you have to understand the logic behind Russia's shadow fleet. When sanctions hit Russian oil exports, the Kremlin did not try to adapt legally. It did not reform its economy. It did not negotiate seriously. No, instead, it chose defiance. The plan was simple and arrogant. Buy aging tankers that nobody wants, insure them through obscure schemes, register them under flags belonging to states with shipping regulations so outdated they might as well be written on parchment, and then move oil anyway. Then sell it, cash the money, repeat until something happens. I guess something did happen finally. The Kremlin's attitude was openly rebellious. What are you going to do, sanction every rust bucket floating in international waters, they said. Before you finish the paperwork, we will double the fleet, triple it, break every rule you dare to enforce it. And for a while that gamble kinda worked. Well, not until recently. Western systems move slowly, they do. Legal mechanisms are designed for compliance, not defiance. You cannot regulate smugglers the way you regulate airlines. You cannot fine criminals into obedience. But here is the mistake Moscow made. Even criminals operate under rules. Not moral rules, but power rules. Unspoken rules. Drug traffickers do not worry about safety inspections, but they do worry about upsetting the cartel. They don't care about tax law, but they do care about getting their heads crushed if they cross the wrong people. Putin assumed there would be shadow traders without pirate states, smugglers without enforcers, but, well, guess what? That was never going to last. By choosing legality as policy, Russia did not escape rules. It just switched the rule books. And in that new rule book, the biggest gang wins. Putin thought he was the biggest fish in the ocean. Pun intended. But as we all know, there is always someone bigger. Let's talk about why Putin was not as smart as he thought with his shadow fleet in our next chapter. This is the part that makes the Kremlin's position so weak it's almost comical. Russia violated international law knowingly, openly and loudly. They wanted everyone to see that they do not care about some measly rules. And when the United States responded by physically seizing the vessels, what exactly was Moscow supposed to do? Sue them? Appeal? Complain to the same institutions it spent years mocking and undermining? Or, cry about lawlessness while running a smuggling operation? You already see that the irony is painful. The Russian crew repainted a flag on the hull, believing it would protect them. Well, it didn't. The US did not blink, the ship was taken, the crew was charged. And now comes the question everyone in Moscow wants to avoid asking out loud. What's the response? Guys, what are we going to do? Seize American ship maybe in return and try to exchange them just like what we did with one basketball player and a literal death merchant. Well, it's impossible this time. That would be self-destructive. What about escalate militarily? Well, not even tankers, not our tankers, not in Atlantic. Not when Russian warships already demonstrated they will not act. Especially when Ukrainians with barely any navy were able to push Russians away from the Black Sea. So instead, the Kremlin does what it always does when confronted by real power. It stays silent. It ignores until the problem goes away. No speeches, no bravado, no asymmetric response, no just deep, humiliating quietness. And just think about the contrast. Putin has flattened cities for far less. He has destroyed entire regions over imaginary threats. But now, when a Russian flag tanker carrying Russia's most important export is seized in full view of the world, there is nothing. And the silence is the loudest admission of weakness imaginable. Just years ago, Putin was treated as the central figure of global geopolitics. He even, let's be honest, started to be seen as such recently once again by some people. The man everyone tiptoed around, the one whose moods supposedly shaped the world events. Leaders hesitated, calculated, worried about provoking him. And that's it, that illusion evaporated the moment a US boarding team climbed into the tanker. Nobody's asking what Putin thinks anymore. Nobody's waiting for his reaction. The world moves on in real time. And the most brutal part is this one. Putin only looked like a geopolitical mastermind because he was playing alone. The moment another major power decided to stop pretending and play by the same ruthless logic, Putin was exposed as a regional strongman with just global delusions. There was a widespread belief that Trump would be outmaneuvered, mocked, humiliated by the Kremlin theatrics, that Putin would run circles around him. That assumption, and well, guess what? That assumption lasted exactly until 2 tankers were seized in one day. Trump may not care about conventions, but he understands leverage. And oil tankers carrying billions of dollars are leverage you can grab with both hands. This is not about liking or supporting anyone. No, it's about recognizing a shift. When the world's biggest power enters the same lawless arena Russia has been operating in, Moscow does not dominate it. It gets crushed. Putin wanted a Wild West, and guess what? He got one. He just forgot that in the Wild West, the bigger gun decides who owns what. There is a poetic justice in how all of this is unfolding. Russia spent years eroding international norms, laughing at treaties, violating borders, stealing assets, pirating culture, poisoning cities, and dismissing rules as weakness. And now the same logic is being applied to Russia's own lifeline. Your oil, your ships, your crews now up for grabs. This is not stability. It is not victory. It's chaos catching up with its author. The erosion of rules that kept the world from tearing itself apart for 80 years is not something anyone would or should celebrate. It will hurt everyone. But it is fitting that the first ones to feel the consequences are those who insisted that rules do not matter. Putin simply wanted action. He was bored with order. He wanted to prove that strength alone decides everything. His wish was granted. The tankers are gone, the money is gone, the illusion is gone, and what's left is a regime staring at the consequences of its own philosophy, unable to respond, unable to escalate, and unable to pretend anymore. The year did not just change on the calendar. Something far bigger shifted. The age of pretending is over. The age of force without rules has begun. And Putin just learned that there is always someone stronger waiting to enforce and fight against him. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to my channel for more news like this. If you wish to support our war, the links down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.